This is a special City of Waupaca City Council meeting.
All right, welcome everybody to this special City Council meeting. I will call this meeting to order, and as always, let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and we'll have Sandy take roll.
Brian Smith,
Here.
Colin Dykstra,
Here.
Lori Chestnut,
Here.
Paul Hagan,
Here.
Henry Veliker,
Here.
Scott Perchatsky,
Here.
Dave Peterson,
Here.
Paul Mayo,
Here.
Dimitri Martin,
Here.
and Eric Olson.
Here.
9 present, we have a quorum.
You want to read the open meeting statement too? Thanks. Thinking ahead here.
This meeting and all meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the media in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes, so the citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
All right. Next up is the approval of the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, Colin, go ahead.
I think Sandy had said there was 9. I believe we only have 8.
Paul's here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that part. All right, my bad. Completely apologize.
I'm here.
Okay, the next up is the approval of the agenda. So we would need a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Chestnut, second by Olson, that we approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Against, say no. Motion carried. The agenda has been approved. Just a reminder to put your cell phones on silent if you have them in here with you. Luckily, I just did. First item is, and the main reason we're here tonight, is the resolution number 1530. This is a resolution designating appropriations and levying a tax for the 2023 budget of the city of Waupaca. And before I turn it over to Aaron, just want to thank you for being able to attend tonight's special meeting. Sorry that we weren't able to get through the process at last meeting, but we were able to get it and make sure that we get it finished before the December 6th meeting. And so that's why we called the special meeting tonight. Any questions that you might have? Aaron does have a presentation that he'd like to give you on the budget, but obviously if you have any questions, feel free to ask those questions of either Aaron or myself. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Smith. Good evening, council members. As you can see in your packet, the second page of your packet is a resolution, 1530, which we would be asking City Council to consider adopting and designating the levy for the 2023 budget for the City of Waupaca. I am going to go through our memo, and this remains.
Is now joining.
Let me just pause for a sec. Who joined us? I know Justin was. Hey, Justin, is that you that just joined? Justin Behrens?
Yes, it is.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for joining. Okay, so on page 3, you'll see a memo. This is slightly updated from the one you saw at our original presentation. And it really is a summary of what we're looking to accomplish, some of the challenges, some of the highlights of the 2023 budget. I'm going to go through it faster than I did the first time, but there has been some updates in these conversations that I think council should be aware of. So notable highlights of property values. We've talked about this at quite a bit of length. The equalized value went up 13% to $136 million, almost over that by 500,000. Our net new construction number came in at 2.44%, and our terminated TID adjustment, an additional 5.49%. Just a reminder, we are taking advantage of those lifts to the maximum when we look at levy limit increases and what we're able to do to help support our operating expenses. As we go through the memo, obviously we've talked about inflation at length. I'm not going to go over that anymore. I do want to touch again, just a reminder on our general fund balance and that we are sitting at a healthy policy. Per the 2021 audited numbers, 32.6%, which exceeds our 15 to 25% policy. That has been a reason of our positive credit rating, and we are presenting a budget that does keep that intact as this budget is balanced for 2023. We've talked about this as well. We have budgeted a 3% increase for non-represented employees. This budget also includes a longevity pay program, which is a little changed from the last time that we met here, the last time I presented this budget, and that is another item on today's agenda. But I will say that a lot of those changes came from some feedback from staff, both department heads and other staff, and we did make those amendments to what we feel like is strengthening it from its original version. There was a slight cost increase in that. $18,600 over is the total increase that, or is the total cost of implementation. The increase was over in between $6,000 and $7,000 from the original version of it. We did go through, and actually we were when we went through this as department heads, Justin flagged an item in his revenue line in Public Works that we did not bring up to trends, and we did bring that up to trends, and that is really what covered this and helped make it a balanced budget. Shared revenue, we've talked at length about as well. We've talked about the challenges with shared revenue. We did see a slight increase for 2023. However, hardly enough to offset some of the inflation challenges at 0.7% and 0.08% for transportation aids. I'm going to continue to go down here. So again, as we get into the wage adjustments, the total wage adjustments again are at 3%. We do understand that this is not matching CPI. Few municipalities can match CPI. We also understand that our employees are our most valuable asset. And there is another item on the agenda tonight that looks to do something from an employee retention standpoint, and that is the ARPA funding, and we'll get to that later. That doesn't necessarily have an impact on this budget, but I did want to mention that. Additionally, you'll see that when we first presented this, I did communicate that we would inform our police union reps of this increase and how that differs from what their contract says for 2023. We wanted to suggest opening up discussions to change that so everyone would have the 3%. We have since been informed that they'll stick with their current contract and look to renegotiate when that contract is done, which will be likely the fall of 2023. So they would be at that 2% during that time period. Health insurance, we've talked about that, and pretty considerable costs that the city is covering for health insurance, and all of the details on the impacts of that are there. No new proposed positions in this budget. We've talked about the ambulance and EMS and how that went up about 22%, and that's not only because costs went up through Gold Cross, it's a combination of costs and the per capita equation that is used for that, and we grew in population, which is a good thing for funding in a lot of other areas. Just so happens it makes it a little more expensive for us with ambulance EMS services. Fire department, this is expected to increase by approximately, or is going to increase approximately $8,000, and this actually went down a little bit. The fire district did kind of went over their budget again, and that is actually closer to $6,000 now. So that is an update. We've been over transit. The only thing I want to say about transit, last week Stephanie and I sat through a 5311 funding compliance audit. That all went very, very well. There is one item that we will be bringing forward on December 6th. That is probably one of the only items that I would expect to come out of that. We've talked about raising fares for transit. We've already voted on it. After that vote, we found out that there was a public hearing requirement that the DOT has. We've have that public hearing on December 6th. And just to make it clean, the DOT has suggested we just vote again on the same thing for a process standpoint. So you can expect to see that as kind of a repeat item on December 6th. Airport fund, we've talked about the job that Clad Arrow is doing, Matt and Brittany, and really raising revenues in a short time there and the impact there. Here is certainly an update. Obviously, last time we gave this presentation, we did not have the total levy and the mill rate. This budget is based off that total tax levy, which is mentioned in your resolution of $3,639,218, which equates to a city mill rate of $9.67, which is a decrease of 23 cents. Just for perspective and what that means, average, now this can fluctuate, and depending on, this is changing. Residential values are changing very quickly, but the most updated numbers I have is the average home value in the city of Waupaca at $151,000. So that would be a decrease in the city's portion of taxes of $34.73. And I'll get into the total mill rate in a second. In conclusion, that remains unchanged. We've talked about the challenges we'll have from year to year. Hopefully we see some changes from state law and funding that help us out in the future. But in conclusion, we do feel like this is a budget that strikes the right balance of addressing needs, but also keeping us remaining sustainable into the future. Again, two other important notes. This is a budget that maintains services. It also is a budget that moves towards, obviously, the public works facility, which we've been talking about for, months, but more like years. And there's been conversation and action on that lately. The next page is updated tax rate calculation worksheet. You can see that. I'm going to bring you actually to the next page because this is more of a comparison. And these are numbers we didn't have in full last week. We do now. Actually, I think the school tax credit just came on Friday stuff. Is that correct? So we do have our full mill rate picture. And you can see in 2021, the full mill rate with all the taxing jurisdictions was $24.60. And 2022, that number is $23.82. So if you take that full mill rate, that total tax bill on the $151,000 home in the city, in 2021, it was $3,714. In 2022, that same home would be $3,596, just for comparison. The next several pages are the budget detail that comprise all of the things that I just summarized. And I'm going to take us to the last page because this has been updated as well with projections as accurate as we can get them with the information we have today. So 2023, the numbers are completely updated and plugged in and final. And that equates to that $9.67 mill rate, as you can see on the bottom. And then in 2024, you'll see that drop, projected drop to $8.86. And that's largely due to the revaluation, which is starting actually this month. Bomar Appraisal is starting that, and we'll continue that work through 2023. And then after those kind of big things, then we would anticipate more of a leveling off and maintaining that. So that is kind of a summary of what we're looking at for the 2023 city budget. I would be recommending then approval of resolution number 1530. But before that, of course, willing to answer any questions that council may have.
Go ahead, Scott.
Could you give me a quick explanation? The new net construction is 2.44%, and now we closed those TIDs, and you've got a percentage in here of, I believe it was 5 something. Now, do those go together to give us the additional levy we can do then? Is that what I'm reading?
Yeah.
You got 160,000 additional property tax from the TIDs closing, is that?
You stack them on top of each other.
Stack them? Okay.
Yep, so the 7 point,
Okay.
whatever
All
that
right.
comes up to. Yeah. Without the TID termination, we'd be sitting at the 2.4.
Anybody else? Any questions, comments? Yeah, Henry, go ahead.
I guess I'm looking at the library fund, and the ending fund balance is a negative. I'm assuming I don't see any donations, and the Friends of the Library is a very strong group. And we're not probably showing that income on our budget, but they're gonna be in an operating, no fund balance if they spend out their budget in 2023. I guess I'm sure the leadership in the library is understanding that, and everything's fine, because I think this is probably the 6th or 7th year they've been on a separate fund.
Henry, what page are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
24.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm not seeing it on,
Yeah,
I think it's the last,
we got it. Page
got it?
24. Yeah.
yeah.
So
See the yellow column there, they're at a negative fund balance at the end of
Yep, yep.
23. Again, that's assuming you spend out all the budget that's allocated, which you're managing it. Maybe that's not gonna come to pass. But I'm not sure how we maybe show donations to the library, and whether we have to include those or not. There's like a donation fund that can help supplement our budget for the library.
So Henry, I'm going to speak to that really quickly, and then I'm going to
Okay.
turn it over to Eric. Because I know Eric and the library board have been working on a budget, and I know that for our purposes, when we put this budget booklet together, we are concerned from a city general fund standpoint, as I know you can relate to, as the transfer out number. So what is the general fund providing to the library fund to make that work? That number remains unchanged from what it was last year. And I know that Eric has been working off of that, and I'm guessing, Eric, that this may look a little different because that was our focus. And I know you have been working with the library board on a budget that does balance, but I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, it does look a little different, so that's why I hadn't hopped in already, is just kind of processing the differences there. Speaking to the library budget, we do certainly have some challenges. We had Peg's retirement that needed to be paid out this year. Library doesn't generally carry much in the way of a balance from year to year. In addition to needing to pay out for PEG, we do need to plan for a couple additional likely retirements of long-tenured employees in the years coming up. So we've had a lot of challenges to reconcile. The budget that was approved by the Library Council, the Library Board, is balanced, does not show a deficit for spending for next year. I'm not sure which number, if it's perhaps the donations number expected that didn't make it in. But I know that was from the for the library, for myself, for the board, that was important that we approved a balanced budget.
And I know you are leaning a little heavily on donations, or a little more heavy.
We have been leaning a bit more on the donations the last few years.
And just so City Council understands, kind of as I briefly mentioned, we set that transfer out number to the library fund, and then what happens, there's kind of two processes that are separate. And one is our process as the whole city budget, and then the library board kind of does its thing, and their finance committee, and they put together their budget knowing what that number is in our budget. So kind of once we give them that number, we are less concerned about that, and I don't mean that in a negative way here, unless we hear something from the library director saying, like, we can't get this to work, and we need to revisit that. That is not what happened. They were able to put together a balanced budget, so I would be happy to send that updated one out, just so everyone has it. But okay.
Does that answer your question, Henry? No
All right.
problem.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Aaron, do we look at all to the future when we do these, like 2023's upcoming budget here? I mean, we know inflation's still in place and things are gonna kind of, is there any intertwining here that you kind of use in this budget to, be careful for next year because we may be caught or something? How do you approach that?
Yeah. So the page I have up right now, Scott, is what we've been using to try to do that to the best of our abilities. So it takes into account what we would anticipate for like general fund levy numbers, and to make that work. What we did here, I think, is we used a 1.5 or a 1.5% net new construction. That's been pretty typical over
right.
time for the increase in levy that way. Also debt service fund projections that cover what we need to. And we funnel that through, also you'll see the TIF district increment in there and how that's calculated through the levy limit worksheet. So we've done that. We've plugged all those numbers. Again, those are projections to the best of our ability with the information we have now. But over the course of a year,
Right.
that could change. But yes, we have looked at that.
I guess my point was, do you decide your employee increases? I mean, do you kind of try to look ahead? I mean, because once that's in place, it's in place, and then it just kind of multiplies on itself. Is that any kind of consideration?
Yeah, and it is, and you'll find out when we talk a little bit later on another item that we have on the agenda tonight, that we did take that into consideration. Quite honestly, the general fund is the easiest part to project, because we have levy limits and we can only go up so much each year. So the big difference, and quite honestly, that's the discussion we've been having for a while here, is the debt service fund. And of course, we've taken on some extra debt to move forward with the public works facility, and we wanted to make sure that got feathered in there. I think, quite honestly, we feel pretty comfortable going through 2025
Okay.
on here. I mean, anything beyond that, I think you're
Yeah.
doing any even
Yeah.
bigger guessing.
Right, yeah.
So,
It was just, we're sitting in these times of uncertainty, and now you're telling me you kind of look ahead and make sure you're not hamstringing ourselves 2 years down the road or a year down the road. So that's good to know.
yep, absolutely. Dimitri, go ahead.
I'm just wondering on the assessed value line on this page.
Same page?
Yeah, from 23 to 24, we're anticipating a 28% increase in assessed value. That seems really low, considering we haven't reevaluated all of our properties for over 15 years.
Yeah, good comment, good catch. We, right now, our assessment ratio is 78%. So theoretically, I suppose we could count for a couple more percentages than that, because theoretically we'll be at 100% when that's all done. But right now, we would anticipate, and what these projections anticipate, is basically being at 100% of equalized value, which would be that 536. That's as accurate as we could guess, moving from 419 to 536. If it's more than that, if the assessed value comes back more than that, that mill rate would funnel through and that would go down. If it comes back less than that, it would go up, based on all the other numbers being the same.
Sure. I'm just seeing homes selling for 40, 50% above their assessed value all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really conservative. I think it'll go up a lot more.
Yeah,
Well,
I hope
that's
so.
good.
Yeah.
And I think we try to be conservative with these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if that is accurate, the only thing that, there's only good things that happen. The mill rate would actually go down then, if it stays like that. So, yep. Anybody else? Colin, go ahead.
For this year, as I understand it, the assessed value is the same as it was last year. Is that it? I guess and this is the underlying question. We're seeing a lower mill rate or tax rate, but will that translate to citizens to a lower tax bill? If
This year?
yes,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
The
I
thought, though, next year after this assessment, that tax bill might go up if the rate's the same, or the rate will go down.
That's correct. So next year, depending on where your value is percentage-wise, I think we always say there will be some that pay more and there will be some that pay less, and the amounts are almost impossible to determine.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to get an indication of what can happen, the city of Green Bay just went through that, and they are at just about the same as we were. They were at like 80%, and they went up to 100%. And of course, they have some winners and losers, and that's been on the news quite a bit. So if you go to, well, the one I watch is WBAY, go to their website, you'll get some stories from some taxpayers and stuff. But that's what you can expect in the city of Waupaca too, that there will be people that we can't increase the levy, so taxes are just going to be reapportioned. Some people are going to pay more and some are going to pay less. That's just the way it works.
How does that work then on the county level and on the school board level if the appraised values go up due to our revaluation? Does that mean that our city property owners are going to be paying more in county and school?
So they shouldn't be paying more. I think the same effect would happen when we do the reval.
But only if the entire school district reevaluated. If only the city reevaluates, but the rest of the townships don't, then their mill rate gets spread across and our city residents should be paying more, right? Am I understanding that?
I do see what you're saying. And to be perfectly honest, Dimitri, I've been so focused on the city's impact and kind of what we can control that I don't know if I have a great answer for you as we sit here right now.
Yeah, we can find that out.
Would love to look into it.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is either. I don't know.
I think
Everybody else does.
in our the one form that we have, and it's just conjecture, I'm not an expert on it, but each the county, the school, it's all broken down individually, and so the city tax rate is only related to the city. Even if our valuation changes, the amount that our city levies doesn't have anything to do with the amount that the county levies.
No, but their levy gets spread based on property values.
Okay.
So the one thing I will say is that, like, when we figure out our mill rates and the levy and the impacts, it gets thrown into a calculator that is from the DOR that then comes up with an apportioned value, and that gets broken out in all of them. And how that exactly works,
Yeah.
that's what I'm not prepared to
Right.
to answer.
No, I think I know what you mean. It's like you were saying before that the city's currently at 75% of market value. Will they apply a percentage to the different municipalities to kind of equalize the differences in how often they revalue their properties? I would assume.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to deviate too much from our discussion, but it's
Good
interesting.
question. I made a note. I will look into that.
You were just trying to stump them, weren't you?
You got me.
Anybody else? Any questions? Colin, go ahead.
There's another sideline that's not really directly related to us, but the resolution that was passed or what referendum that was passed, is that on this year's, for the school district, I'm sorry, is that on this year's tax?
I actually also don't know the answer to
Okay, it's,
that. It is not.
They're going to borrow this year.
Okay.
okay,
So that impact will be seen in the future.
Seen it next.
thank you. That was a question somebody had asked me, so I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
we know. Thank you, that's all.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Paul.
Getting back to the library, if the library has the same budget from last year and obviously wages and books and other items have increased, where is the difference coming from that is either being cut or reappropriated or whatever the case may be?
So you got, Eric is going to answer this for you.
Indeed. So for this fiscal year, a big part of the help is that the county funding, because of the formula that is applied by the county, gave us a pretty decent little bump in terms of revenue that we're getting from that source. The big challenge in terms of planning out for the following years is that bump for 2023 is based off of the numbers in terms of cost per circulation for 2020. And that was a very weird year. So we're getting a bump this year, but most likely we're not going to see that as revenue that's going to stay with us. Probably see another little bump next year because 2021 was also pretty weird. But after that, I'm probably looking to see most of that go away. So we are looking at some real challenges in terms of financial planning for the next few years out. For this year, in addition to the bump from the county, we've also been unable to fill one of our part-time positions. So that was not plan A for that to go unfilled. It's our programming and outreach person. It's an important position at the library, but is one of the side effects for that. It does cover any remaining gap in terms of the budget for the next year. So that is the 60-second breakdown as far as where the library is at and where we're looking towards for the next couple years. But we're budgeted this year without having to look at trimming any staff hours, though it was something that we did have to discuss a bit when it looked like we might potentially be filling the position. And we didn't have to seriously look at anything like cutting hours or cutting services. So, short version, we're good for 2023.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
One more thing, just maybe for the citizens that are watching, weren't we required to do a reval because we were below a threshold from the state? Am I remembering that right?
Right. We're at,
It wasn't just arbitrary on our part. We were required to do this, wasn't it?
correct. We had fallen so far below 100%, and it was the fourth year in a row. And once you hit 5, you're required. So
Yeah.
there was no way we were going to come
I
back.
just wanted to get that out there so people understand it's kind of, we had to do it.
It's quite a journey that we've gone through too, because if you go back to 2007, 2008, in the housing market, we were at about 110%, some even a little higher. And so we went from that 110 down to 78%. The good thing about waiting those number of years, obviously, is it looks like it's might be leveling off a little bit here. So if we would have done it this last year, how would we might have been looking for doing another one again this year. So we'll see. All right. Anybody else on the resolution or the passing of the budget for 2023? We'd be looking for a motion to approve.
A motion to approve Resolution 1530.
Second.
Motion by Colin, second by Henry, that we approve resolution number 1530. It's a resolution designating appropriations and levying a tax for the 2023 budget for the city of Waupaca. Any further discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Henry Veliker,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
and Colin Dykstra.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
All right, next up, this is a request to approve a longevity pay schedule for our non-representative employees. And it's stated that way, quite honestly, because our representative employees do have a longevity pay already in their agreement. So I'll just let Aaron move forward with this.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. This one starts on page 36 of your council packet. As I mentioned in the budget summary, we did change this from the last time we talked on October 18th. And a lot of it was based off feedback from department heads and staff and taking a look at what we could do financially and within our budget and have it continue to be sustainable. So again, one of the main goals we wanted to accomplish from this longevity system was to kind of address some recent compression that we've seen in our employees. We've had new hires that have had to come on at maybe more than would have been 3 years ago, 2 years ago, due to the employee market and how challenging that has been to find people. There's not 50-some people that apply for jobs anymore. You're sometimes lucky if you get 5. And those individuals have options. So to address some of that, what happens is you continue to bring people in to get the best people for the city of Waupaca, for our organization, and for our residents. And then at the same time, it can feel as if those longer-term employees are not as valued, and that is not what we want our pay to communicate. A couple of the adjustments that we made here, you can see that what we did is we extended it out, hold on a sec here, to 35 years. We have a few employees that have been here for 35 years. It has not been abnormal to have a 35-plus year employee at the city of Waupaca, and that's a credit to this organization for the last long time. There's a lot of people that think, hey, that 35-year employee doesn't exist anymore. I think we're not willing to accept that as a reality. We've only been talking about that for a few years. Maybe there's some truth to it. We hope that there's not. We hope that in 35 years we will have a number of 35-year employees. Also, you can see we basically flatlined it to say every 5-year increment has the same amount of incentive. Right now, we tried to mimic at first the union longevity scale, and it does have different amounts for different years. I think we didn't want our policy to communicate that you're more valuable to keep in year 6 compared to year 11, compared to year whatever. Like every employee has a lot to bring, and sometimes it's different at different points of their careers, but they're all important for us to keep, which is why we've structured it this way. Just to explain this, that 20 cents after year 5 years of service would get applied after the cost of living increase for that year to their base wage. So they don't get the 20 cents first and then have the percentage cost of living increase go off of that. It's applied after. And then it's added to their base wage, and that continues to stay with them throughout their career. And that happens every 5 years. Again, the city may deny longevity pay for just cause subject to the grievance procedure. But other than that, that is a summary of what we are looking to accomplish with this longevity pay schedule. Again, it is different than the police unions. In conversations with the police union representative, we did communicate that this version is different than what we had brought forward on October 18th. They would have the right to negotiate this in the future if they thought that that was something that was important to them in future negotiations, but would not go into it would not go into effect for the reps for 2023. So, again, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Also, would be requesting that City Council consider approving the longevity pay policy as attached to go into effect on January 1st, 2023. And as a reminder, this is built in the budget that was just approved.
All right, any questions, comments? Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
I believe last time we looked at this, there was amounts for each 5 years, but they weren't stacked on top of each other. This, to be clear, is cumulative, which is to say, if I can, after 10 years, it would be base plus 40 cents. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I have the original. This is the police union one. And the way it was written, good question, was after 5 years of service, 12 cents. After 10 years of service, 20 cents. But it was written in a way that you didn't receive 20 cents at that time, you received 8 because you've already
additional.
received your 12. In this scale, you receive 20 cents each time.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
I think what you're saying at 25 years, so five increments, somebody would get their base plus $1.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Looking for a motion?
Move to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mayo, second by Dykstra, that we approve of the longevity pay schedule for all non-representative employees. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Henry Veliker.
Aye.
Scott Berchatsky.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Dimitri Martin.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
And Colin Dykstra.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
All right, next up. Again, I'm going to turn this over to Aaron, but I just want to make a couple comments. This has to do with reallocating a portion of the ARPA funding for employee retention. Again, we are, and Aaron explained a lot of this in his memo, so I don't want to go into that. So obviously, times have changed a little bit since when we first allocated the ARPA funds. So that's why we're having this discussion tonight. I think it's also important to remember too that under levy limits and budget constraints, we were limited on the amount of pay raise that we can give to our employees. And it's well below what the cost of living increase was. And so we felt that it was important that we try to help our employees out, although we couldn't add it so that it was cumulative after this year. We felt that if we could do it in a kind of a bonus format this year, we could at least help in this year. And who knows what next year will be about anyway. So with a little help from Colin and Aaron and I, We came up with a plan to move forward with this. We hope that you like the concept. I think it's important, though, to remember that the housing projects program is not dead. We anticipate using the majority of that money still to continue the housing project, but we just felt like this was the right place to get the money for it to help our employees. So, Aaron?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Council members, Mayor Smith really summarized the thinking pretty well. I will kind of give a little bit into the mechanics here on page 39. Just as a reminder and background, on April 6, 2022, City Council did vote to designate $624,766 of ARPA funding to revenue replacement, and at the time, it was intended that all of that go towards the home improvement program, with $24,766 being set aside for administrative assistance. In 2022, to meet expenditure restraint limits and to qualify for that for next year, we had to stay around that $200,000 mark. That leaves us with about $400,000 remaining as we enter 2023. You know, I guess not to reiterate too much what the mayor said, but I will again go back to things have changed a little bit since that time. We have now put together a budget that is able to give 3%, but not more than that. Unfortunately, obviously, we would love to provide CPI and ensure that it will be sustainable moving forward. That wasn't a balance that was possible. We didn't feel. So this is a way to, I've heard inflation. We don't know, right? But it's a way to maybe address and combat what we hope to be more of a blip than a trend, right? And it's a one-time payment. It wouldn't be added to base pay. It couldn't be added to base pay. But the idea of reallocating $100,000 towards employee retention type measures is something that felt worth a discussion and felt appropriate. So of that 100, I think it's also important to note that the remaining $300,000 would then be intended to stay with the program. It was a successful program. There was applications that were received over the course of 2 months, and then we ran out of that, what was allocated for 2022. So I would anticipate if this was the direction that the ARPA funding would be spent by the end of 2023, because I would anticipate that program being successful again to the level of what's left. But out of the $100,000 that's being proposed for a reallocation, $70,000 of that $100,000, the idea would be to be as a one-time kind of bonus payment for all regular full-time employees and regular part-time employees as defined in the City of Waupaca handbook. And it'd be done on a prorated system based off of hours worked in 2022. And this would be to help kind of fight the economic impact that COVID-19 has had on our ability to recognize the efforts of those employees. You can see an approximate dollar designation then for how that would work from a prorated basis, and how that would be distributed. So if they worked 75% of full-time, that's the percentage of the bonus they would get, half, 25%, so on and so forth. That also applies to new employees. So if a new employee came in, because it's based off of hours worked in 2022, if they came in July 1st, they'd be considered in that half range, not the full. The second objective would be to provide recognition for those employees which had job duties that required regular in-person interactions or physically handling of items during that. And for the purpose of ease, we'll deem that hazard pay when we talk about it. And you can see the chart and how that total dollar designation would lay out if we distributed the $30,000 that way. We were able to go through and our payroll system at the time, we were coding people that were physically showing up during that time when other employees were working remotely. and that is how we would determine that. Just to be clear, even though a position may have had to show up, let's say somebody in the wastewater department, which they were all showing up in person, they were just hired last year. So they weren't around during that time period. That individual, because they weren't actually doing the hazard pay, wouldn't qualify for this. They would qualify for the first table, but not that second. So it would be people that just worked during that time period. These payments, if we were to distribute it this way, would be made after January 1st, 2023 to ensure compliance with our 2022 expenditure restraint limits. Just as a reminder, our expenditure restraint, that program, the ceiling went up a lot in the state formula, and we have plenty of room to expend all of this money without being hurt for eligibility for 2024. That's important to note. There is an exception. We do have a couple of retirees that are still working here now as of what we expect to be an action on this. But they will be retired as of January 1st. So for retirement system purposes and primarily that, we would actually pay them their amounts that they were due this year. But that would be a minimal amount because we're talking a couple people, and that would not negatively impact our expenditure restraint. So I believe I've pretty much summarized everything. The only thing I'll add to that is that legal counsel has looked at this, and they have confirmed that this does comply with the United States Treasury's guidance as outlined in their final rule. So we would be requesting that City Council consider approving the reallocation of $100,000 of ARPA funds to be used for one-time employee payments as outlined in this memo. Obviously happy to answer any questions you may have.
Go ahead, Lori.
I just want to know, now law enforcement is full-time city employee, correct? So they would be receiving it for hazard pay?
They would, yep.
Okay, thank you. And fire's a fire district, so they would not, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they would have to be a direct employee of the city. Go ahead, Scott.
Just a statement, this is not unique to this city, what we're doing here. The county has already done the same thing, using some of their ARPA funds to give a little bonus this year to their employees, so it's not maybe not common, but it's been done in our county already, so.
Okay. Dave, go ahead.
Just curiosity leads me to ask, how many full-time employees would this be? So if it's 55 employees, that'd be $1,000 per person. Know what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, how does that actually come out for the number of employees? I don't really know how many employees we have that fit each category. It doesn't matter, but I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I do have that, but we did want to make so to answer that question, for the cost of living adjustment, because of some of the retirees and such, it would be 49 full-time employees, and I do not have the exact number off the top of my head with all the part-times. And the full-time employees for hazard pay was about 33. Right in that low 30s.
Go ahead, Henry.
Well, I appreciate the staff's concern about trying to rectify this challenge we have with the COLA. And I don't know, I didn't do the math. It looks like maybe 15% of our total ARPA funds would be allocated to this if we approve it. That seems like a reasonable ratio, to help our address this. And I do like the idea that the ones that were put in Hazard's way are getting a little more recognition through this additional 30. So I think there's a good balance overall, and it doesn't kind of raise our floor for next year's budget. So I think it was a pretty creative way to, I'm sure, address some concerns that the leadership team had on morale and some concerns about, inflation and those kind of things. So I think it's a pretty neat approach.
Thanks, Henry. Dimitri, go ahead.
So if we were to add let's just take the 70,000 and add that on top of what was given for a pay increase of 3%, does that get us closer, that total amount? Does that wind up being fairly close to the CPI?
It depends on what level the employee is making. X amount percent of a employee making 40,000 is different than an employee making 80,000. So it just varies. It gets us closer in all situations, which is really what we were trying to do. It doesn't add to base pay, but it helps.
I don't want anyone to forget that when we talk about compensation, we're also looking at the benefits. And it's easy, we all do it. You're just looking at your hourly rate. But I can tell you that I've done some work, some consulting, and it's not unusual for cities to require employees to pay 12 and 15% towards their health insurance premium. So the fact that the employees are paying 10, I think, is a positive, and the city is continuing to pick up the 90%. So I don't want that to fall from anybody's mind on any of this. So I think when it's all factored in, it does keep getting. It's addressing this inflation issue in a very responsible way, I think, and trying to take care of our employees.
Anybody else? All right, any other questions related to this? All right, we'd be looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
By Lori, second by Dave Peterson, that we approve the request to reallocate a portion of the ARPA funding for employee retention as presented. Any discussion? Amy, will call the roll.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Henry Veliker,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
and Colin Dykstra.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
All right, thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jarrett. We didn't think that we would need to be talking about shoveling sidewalks this early in the year, but we do. So we thought it was prudent for us to put this on the agenda tonight. I know it's not related to the budget or at all here. So it's just adjusting the fees for the sidewalk snow removal. Jared, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, so this one's at the very end, page 42. I've included just a short memo as well as a brochure that we put together that just tries to be more informative to the public on what we're doing, et cetera. So purpose of this topic is to look at the fee charge that we're currently charging. Currently, what we are charging when we have to go out and complete snow shoveling for a property on their sidewalks. The first offense is $75. The second is $75 plus $169. The third is $75 plus $250. And the $169 and 250 cents, they're citation fees. So, as we continue to get up, it gets there gets up there in price. Having discussions with both the street superintendent as well as our code enforcement officer, et cetera. We've taken a look at that $75 fee, and we were curious if the $75 even covers or begins to cover, what it takes us to complete this service. And so actually Henry had asked that same question earlier today. I had sent him a little bit of a PDF, just kind of what we went through to take a look at what approximately the prices of these things. And it's of course difficult because there's a lot of hidden fees on what exactly you are, taking away from when when the sidewalk needs to be shoveled. The exact cost of what a shovel is, the maintenance, wear and tear of a vehicle to go out and inspect, just all of these items. It gets to be quite a bit, so it's a bit of a range game. But looking at the approximate fees of what you come up with, for us to get out there, we are looking at approximately plus or minus, $225 a time. And that's all the materials, the technology, the vehicles, the administrative time, et cetera, that it takes to go do a single property. And that's, again, counting just a single property, hypothetically. Of course, when we go out there, we try to take a look at what we can clump together to try to make it easier on staff and staff time. But again, so I'll say 200 even is plus minus is what you're looking at per time. So looking at our fees, the 75 does not sufficiently cover that fee or that service that we're providing. And again, I'll point out that this is a service we should not have to provide. It is only a service that we are doing because it is necessary to do. Snow shoveling should be at the responsibility of that property owner. It is a safety concern. Kids walking to school, individuals with disabilities and wheelchairs, they all use that and depend on that sidewalk to travel. So, it's something that I, again, personal safety take very seriously. We want to make sure we try to encourage every resident to shovel in as timely as a fashion as they are able. And understandingly so that there are certain situations that flexibility will need to be provided, but we'll take those as a as-needed basis. So what we'll be looking at to change the fees, and my memo is a little bit incorrect, so I will verify. First option, so this is on page 43. Option 2, I would just ask you disregard. We'd only be really looking at option 1, where the first offense is a $150 fee, the second offense is a $150 fee, and the third offense, which I will clarify or change this a little bit, it would be a $150 fee plus the $169 citation. So similar to our current schedule, except we're increasing the fees a bit anyway, so we're really just changing that citation to the third offense to bring it to a total of approximately $319 total once you do all that. So that's what we'd be looking to change it to. Again, it gets us closer to where we should be. Again, there's some give and take, and we want to try to stay within what the state requires, that you're charging the fee based on the service you provide. So if for say it is maybe a property with a smaller sidewalk, we want to make sure we're still within that requirement. And of course, this could be looked at next year and recalculated. If we're having the same issues, or we feel that it could be higher, we could add an additional citation to maybe the second offense kind of thing. But that's what we'd be looking at. So first offense, 150 instead of 75. Second offense, 150 instead of the 150 plus 169 citation. And then third offense would be 150 plus the 169 citation instead of the 75 and $200 citation, if that makes sense.
Go ahead, Eric.
So if you get a citation this year and you get a citation next year, is that your second offense next year, or does it start over?
It's in the same season, I'm sorry. So we'd be entering the winter season now. So we would be looking at if they got a first offense, or, we had to shovel their sidewalk in December here, and then we had to shovel their sidewalk in January. That January would be their second offense.
I was thinking if we get anything close to what Buffalo got, I might just be willing to pay that $75.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. A lot of people are, you try to hire a company, and you won't get them out there for anything less than 75. So a lot of people think, well, if I leave it for two snowfalls and they finally get out there and they charge me 75, I've saved $175, Why not let the city do it? And again, that takes away from our time, which is valuable, and we should be servicing, the public in other ways that matter. So.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Jared, you have option 2 up here. I like that better than option 1.
And so we could do option 2. So I guess I'll put it back on the table. So option 2 would just be a little different. It would be if we wanted to do that and really discourage, negative reinforcement, similar to the car dinging when you don't put your seatbelt on. Same thing we're doing here. We're just making them pay money for us doing the job they should have done. So option 2, you would be looking at a first offense of $150, just a flat rate fee. The second offense would have to be a $150 fee with a $169 citation, which would bring you approximately to the $319. And then the third offense, you would be looking at a $150 fee plus approximately a $338 citation to bring you just about to $500, about $488. So again, just continually increasing the fee amount, which I will say we don't get a lot of third offenses. Which if you're a third offense, that's, I don't know, if you haven't shoveled 3 different times, you've received door knockers and invoices and things, and you're still not getting it, there might be a problem.
Well, this, once we decide on this and vote on this, is that going to go into the water bill as a reminder?
Yes. Yep. So I will.
Several times?
Yep. We put it out as a reminder. I will print off more of those brochures. We will attempt to get those out as much as possible, post on Facebook. We will, I can do a little thing over the radio with Josh, with communications. So yeah, we can definitely get the word out there as much as possible so that people know that these fees are raised and they really should shovel their sidewalks if they don't want to incur a fee.
Scott, you had it.
How do we collect these fees?
So
What's to prevent them from just going all year and then
fees are invoiced to the property owner.
They could ignore it.
They could ignore it.
What's
and
the procedure, I guess?
And then it's added to their tax bill at the end of the year.
Okay.
And they get a notification about that before it's added. So if they want to come in and pay kind of a final notice that, hey, you're going to pay this anyways, whether we add it or don't. So would you like to just pay it now?
So I guess if they want to wait,
they'll
get
pay it either way.
Big bump on their tax bill. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
I want it to be a disincentive, but I don't know if some of them will bother. I don't know, especially landlords and such.
And we've had.
I think that's important that we make sure that everybody understands too. It goes to the property owner.
Right.
So if you are a landlord, that's coming to you, even though you have a tenant that you have an agreement with to shovel their own sidewalk or driveway. It's not going to them, it's going to the property owner. So,
You're trying to get a disincentive, and there's a plague of it, and I do a lot of walking. There's a lot of sidewalks that 3-4 days after snow that's still there. So I don't know what the procedure's been, or if anybody pays, or if they just wait till the end. I mean, I don't know how much of a disincentive it'll be to certain people.
There's been people that have come in and paid. There's been people that have waited till the second notice and then, came and expressed their it's a good word, their displeasure towards it. And then they've paid. Otherwise, there's been some we've just added the property taxes.
Thanks, Jared. Henry, go ahead.
I wish my fellow alderperson didn't offer up a second option because now I'm struggling. I get the point that, people, it's their responsibility. It's not equitable if 99% of our people are shoveling walks. But we do have an obligation to make our community safe. Law enforcement, we don't cover all the costs of law enforcement. We don't cover much from fees and everything else. So I'm concerned a little bit about people, maybe on fixed incomes and stuff. To adjust the fee to bring it up more current, I don't know when the $75 fee was put in, but it's at least 10 years old, I think. So I think there's cause to raise it. I'm not sure I feel good about that much. Because I think we do have some obligation. Our staff works on keeping the community safe. So I'm struggling now, Paul, thank you. I was feeling pretty good about bumping up, but I don't know that I could go to the second option.
Okay, anybody else? Dave, go ahead.
Chime in. Based on Henry, I kind of agree with staying at option 1. The second one seems really scary and almost unfair that way. But, that's some people even just can't get out there and shovel. It doesn't take a 3-foot snow. You're living along Fulton Street or wherever these plows go by at a kind of a high rate of speed, School Street, that snow comes off the plow and it packs like it's 4 feet high. And there are some people who just can't do it, so I understand that. And actually, this first fee schedule is actually a little bit less than what we're doing with the 75 plus one, if you add all the numbers up. You're actually decreasing the total fee. But I still think that's fair.
Yeah, and part of it was the citations also take a lot of staff time. So, you know, if you're going to start introducing the citations, that's why, you know, option 2, the second and third offense both have citations that are, you know, quite a bit higher, just to make sure that we are fully covering it. You know, the option 1, and I will say, you know, this is something we can definitely try option 1 and can report back 2024 season. And if, you know, if we're not seeing a noticeable change and we have to say, hey, we have to step it up a little bit, we can relook at options. We could even redo the calculation and maybe we just bump the fees up to 200, you know, not as much as option 2 as currently proposed. You know, there's alternative options we can do. You know, as staff looked at it, I guess my thought was take a look at option 1, you know, or implement option 1, see how it goes. And if we have to do more, we can certainly do more next season. And that's not a problem with your approval, of course.
Okay, other comments?
I move to approve option 1.
Second.
We got a motion by Martin, second by Veliker, that we approve option 1 for,
And I'll clarify, that's the 150 for the first, 150 for the second, and then a total of 319 for the third, which would be 150 plus the 169 citation. And then I will say if we go up a fourth, it would just be to kind of how our normal one is. It would go up to that 250-cent citation. But like I said, we've rarely got to a third.
everybody understands the motion? Okay, any further discussion? Sandy, you gonna call the roll? Go ahead.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Henry Veliker,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Colin Dykstra,
Aye.
and Paul Mayo.
No.
8 ayes, 1 no, motion carried.
All right, Jared, thanks, get that out.
Could I,
Anything else for the good of the meeting? Colin, go ahead.
related to, I guess I should have brought it up a second ago. Some landlords, they don't get, you know, the tenant pays the water bill, they don't get the water bill. And a landlord could get $600 of fees without even knowing it's happening. I think is what I'm understanding. So I guess my question is it appropriate to put this brochure, your or whatever, in a tax bill as well? So we're certain that landlords in the city of Waupaca are familiar with this new fee.
Yeah, I don't think we can because the county actually sends out the property tax statement. We can ask them though.
Okay. Anyway, I guess that's my only concern is a landlord, certainly an out-of-town landlord or anything, might not even know about this.
Right.
At any rate.
Yeah, if it eases at all, this is definitely not something that's unique to Waupaca. Stevens Point has it. You know, Marshfield has it. I think every community has it.
Yeah.
That actually has some that can enforce it at least.
Right.
So I would hope if you are a landlord, you are knowledgeable of at least that you have to mow your grass and shovel your stuff. So if that eases it all, but if there's something more we can do, we can definitely do that.
Thanks.
Colin, there is on the county tax bill, we can put a little blurb, but it's not very big. I don't know, how many characters, how many words we could use, but it's possible that we could put a little something on it.
Anyway, you guys consider it.
Okay.
I don't think we have to say more to your council, but.
Okay, anything else for tonight's meeting? Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Olson.
Second.
You want a second? Paul?
Yeah, I'll go for it this time.
All right.
Yep.
Second by Hagan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Against? Motion carried. We're adjourned at 7:15 PM. Have a great night, everybody.